Here I am in Manchester. Why am I stood at Guy Fawkes Street? Because the property in which this street's attached to is important to Manchester as it is to England, as it is to overall Western history. In 1605, it's alleged that this is where Guy Fawkes and others planned the famous gunpowder plot, which would see him executed in Westminster. Come with me. This property has been here since there was a mansion that stood here since the 11th century, but it wasn't until 100 years later that this was built. And it stands proudly as a bastion of Manchester's history, of English history. Manchester, like other cities, has its own feel, its own vibe. Manchester's responsible for its own fantastic music, its own fantastic industry, and its own culture, its own sense of humour, like so many places. And looking into parts of history like this is what reminds us. Everywhere else these days seems to be forgetting what made us us, apart from a few places that are keeping them preserved. Now, usually when I'm discussing modernisation, modernism, we start straight in with modern buildings, updated new builds. But this building here helps really create the contrast in what we're about to see and what we've seen in the past. And this building has lived through things that we couldn't imagine. It's seen life, death, happiness, sadness. It's seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And here it stands. And so many other buildings like it could have been kept or maintained, or dare I say replicated, to create this very feel, which I think many people in Manchester might not even acknowledge or care about. Same as in London. Many of our fantastic buildings, they go to waste and people just pass them or don't acknowledge them. Instead, they're impressed by these new builds, aspiring instead to that of a penthouse instead of something like this. So in contrast to Ordsall Hall, just round the corner, you get this graffiti along the Thatcher's here, and it goes all the way down the river. Just like in London and other cities. Now, I'm sure there's many graffiti artists that have good intentions, but when it comes to global homogenization, modernism, we've got enough of a problem when it comes to modern architecture and how ugly it is. So the few old buildings we have, we don't really need this all over it, and this is, it annoys graffiti artists when I say this, but I'm sure there's plenty of things that you can paint on or spray on, which aren't going to damage something else. And it seems to me more of an appeal to be recognised as your anonymous pseudonym than appreciate your own heritage and culture, because over here, if you look over here, you can see all over this hoarding, it continues. But that hoarding comes down. I mean, I don't like it, it looks scruffy, but the hoarding comes down. And look up, look at this horrific new build here. All this. Come back down here. It's a part of Manchester's history, its industry. A along its once very busy rivers, and does it really look any different than what it would in France or London or anywhere else? It really does strip the character, because the colours of Manchester, like in many cities, are what help you tell it from the rivers or from the sky. And this and the community that creates it really separates us and the future from that. So you know, it might sound like I'm being a fuddy-duddy, but when I was young, I remember adults telling me how horrific graffiti was for architecture and just for culture, and I remember thinking, don't be ridiculous, you know, you're just behind in the times. But looking at it now, especially when you combine it with modernism itself, when it comes to what is essentially the new industrial revolution, the new industrial craze of modern buildings, making each city and each nation of the West at least look identical. And this is not even, it's not just bringing it down, it's making it look, you know, like some sort of Lost Boys Island, some sort of rebel anarchist community, which is very much what creates this sort of thing, funnily enough. Look at this old crane here, look, coated in. If you look here, some of these are relatively creative. Do I want to see them there? No, not at all. But just the scribble that you get on even the post, which is right next to you here, it's all just scribble. And people say to me, oh, why are you pointing at graffiti, why are you pointing at stickers? Oh, it's because they're bloody ugly, that's why. And even if they look good on canvas, that's fine, but it doesn't mean that everyone else has to put up with them. If you go and see art, you're going to see art. You have to look it up, you have to go to a specific gallery. Don't force this on us. It's the same as architecture that we don't necessarily connect with. So this is Southwood Lads Club. We've just stopped here quickly to show another example of wonderful architecture in Manchester. This is a listed building. It was built in 1903. It's a fantastic example of Edwardian architecture, which has been preserved, and it's got that classic Manchester colour. You know, obviously we're in Salford. If you look just to the left as well, we see this beautiful picture here, this wonderful picture here of the matching houses on the left. This is like quite an iconic picture. As we can see, there's someone setting up to paint over here, and I can imagine he's probably knows the area better than me. But as you can see all the way down the road, it's a quaint, picturesque place, which is unlike the modern world quickly forming around it. So here we are in the heart of modernism, Manchester's modernism, Media City. In my opinion, a grotesquely ugly place, which is more advanced than most of the residential new builds in which you get today. Just before I read my notes, we're going to have a little look at this place, just quickly, standing where we are, and just how horrific it is. I mean, directly behind me, you can see it clearly states what it is. That's the BBC there, which, you know, we all love heavily, don't we? Hey, the BBC, the truth tellers of today. For those that can't handle sarcasm, that is sarcasm. And you're not going to win the awards for guessing why it's called Media City. Over here we have the ITV, or ITV. If we spin you around, we will see a disturbingly unpleasant War Museum. This is the Imperial War Museum, North. What about that looks in any way a reminder to the conflicts of Britain of the past? Or just any conflict whatsoever. It reminds me more so of sort of, I said this before when I think it was in King's Cross, that's like a mothership. That's like something out of you'd get it if you went to Florida and there was a ride for Alien versus Predator. That's what that is, isn't it? That's not a museum. If you go to another war museum or other war museums, you know, some of them have cannons outside. They're great Edwardian or Victorian buildings. That thing, if aliens was to look at this spot here, right, they would be no closer to understanding humanity whatsoever and our history if they based it upon the buildings that had just come up in 5 minutes in comparison to the ones that have been there for hundreds, or dare I say some of our walls and what have you that have been there for thousands of years. They just would not be able to judge us whatsoever. Look here. My other handy assistant just jumping out of the way. So if we look across here, all of this is a new kingdom leading up to the tram here. So come around here for me. So coming in on this tram, you're entering media city. Many people that live and work here. You can see the residential space there attached to another BBC building, which is just over the way. How would you like that, ladies and gents? How would you like to live next to / attached to the BBC? I wonder if many BBC employees have bought those. I mean, this bus shelter looking thing. I mean, it's not a bus shelter, but what is this with the orifice looking thing sticking up? And of course, the place wouldn't be complete without a god ugly Holiday Inn. Right. So why don't we read some of these notes? So to save on time, I'm just going to read this. So the Media City complex is a 200-acre redevelopment project mostly delivered from 2006 by Peel Group, a developer, and is mostly owned by Landsec. Landsec is the largest property investment company in the United Kingdom, with a revenue profit of £221 to £251 million, despite shareholders losing a total of £1.4 billion, or £2 per share for the same period. Founded in 1944 by Baron Samuel of Wick Cross, Landsec is the perfect example of a faceless, soulless, large corporation which actively works to blot out the image of the past and usher in a homogenized world. That's not actually my note-taking there. I agree upon these points with my, shall we say, non-paid colleagues, but very well written there, because we discuss it and he's just noting it down as we're talking about it. So the Salford Docks complex, in which Media City is sited, closed in 1982, previously having been used for the transmission of goods, or transshipment of goods. At one point, the port complex in Manchester handled the third most goods in the whole of the United Kingdom, and we found several sources for this, that this was a very important part, and that's why it was so important in the Industrial Revolution. That's why the cotton industry here was humongous, which we'll be talking about again. In 1988, it was proposed that the docks would be redeveloped, as they love to redevelop our old docks, just like in Liverpool. With the centrepiece of the development being a large art centre, now known as the Lowry, which is this horrific thing over here that looks like it is straight out of Saudi. Yeah? The nature of the development was altered in the early 2000s when it was decided to relocate large media outlets to the area, thus attempting to create a global media centre equivalent to Singapore or Copenhagen. It has been estimated that the cost to move the British Broadcasting Corporation, the BBC, I think it's a joke that we call them British because they have absolutely no British interests or values whatsoever. It's at the expense of £1 billion of which most, shall we say, would have come from the taxpayer or via TV license revenue. And that's just a few of the short notes, because in some of our episodes we spend a long time walking about, looking at the buildings, talking about how much they cost, who built it, but here we've come to the heart, because there's many places in Manchester that would help us explain modernism and its speeding process. But this place for us is a bit like what we did in King's Cross. These are the daddies, you know, these are the big chiefs of modernisation, and these are the people here that will tell us it's a good thing while it's happening. I just can't get over how ugly that thing is over there. Look how quaint and calm the water is. You know, that is original Manchester floating past. That river has seen so many changes, faces, lives, and now it's just, this could be anywhere. Like I usually say, this could be absolutely anywhere. Just in case the place didn't lack class enough, why don't we put some sort of odd LGBT TP up, just to, you know, ensure its leftist values. Mind you, people in the BBC building, if they don't see leftism every 5 to 10 minutes, they have sort of withdrawals and start going absolutely mental. There's the University of Salford, strangely attached to Media City. I wonder how much influence they have in there. Now, when building modern architecture, what you really need to impress the crowds, to really impress people, is big, diamond, ugly, beige things. Can't get enough of it. Big, diamondy, ugly, boloric-y, beige things like this. Great, fantastic. Thanks, whoever built it. Here we have some of the finest architecture I've come across so far in Media City. At least it's got some use. Just look at that. Look down that river. Where are we? What indicates where we are? Oh, the street signs mean. Oh, the postcode. No. They mean nothing now. Now I want to make one thing absolutely clear. I am not here to besmirch or drag the name of Manchester at all. I'm here to defend and protect it. This is not Manchester. I, as a Londoner or Southerner, when I walk into somewhere like this, I'm not experiencing Manchester. I'm no closer to Manchester. This is not a representation. I'm learning absolutely nothing. So please know that when I make something like this, it's to highlight to you and to the people near me how bad it is throughout our entire country and throughout the entire West. If you look at this behind me, that is not a reminder of us. When I say us, I mean the West and our history.